Arahant Samma Sambuddho. Blessings, good evening to you all. As usual, we'll begin with a short guided meditation. So please find a comfortable posture. The Buddha encouraged us to sit up straight and establish mindfulness in front of us, which sometimes confuses people. He meant establish mindfulness with the breath as it enters and leaves the body. So with the inhalation and exhalation. So you have to find that feeling. So take a few deep breaths to establish awareness with that feeling or sensation of the breath going in, breath going out. And Luang Por Chah encouraged us to follow the feeling of the breath in for a while, down into the body. So as you inhale, pick up the feeling at the tip of your nose and observe your lungs filling up with air and your abdomen rising. And the feeling of the abdomen falling, the lungs deflating, shrinking, and the breath exhaling at the tip of your nostrils. This feeling, this process of breathing in, breathing out is going on all the time, throughout your day. If you're not breathing, then you're dead. As long as you're alive, you're breathing. But much of the time we don't notice. But now is the time to pay attention to the breath. And place your awareness at one point. So having noted the breath going in at the tip of your nose, to the chest, to the abdomen, back out again. Just pick one point. So you don't have to follow the breath in and out. You just keep attention at that one point. So sometimes they compare it to the point where a saw cutting wood contacts the wood to actually cut the wood. Even though there's this movement back and forth with the arm holding the saw only contacts the wood at one point and starts cutting in. Or if it was a lathe. In the olden days, like when I was first a monk, we made lathes to turn wood to make umbrellas, which we used to camp in the forest. We'd have an umbrella with a mosquito net hung over it. And to turn the wood for making the umbrella, we had a simple lathe with two metal stakes and a piece of wood held in place by the metal, and then a string or rope was tied around it, and you'd have a branch of a tree, flexible branch, tied to one end of the rope, and you could move the rope by pressing your foot down. You would twist the piece of wood back and forth, and you could carve that wood. So every time you press the rope down, the wood would turn once and you could carve into it or cut into it. So you have this whole movement of back and forth, but actually you only focus your mind on where you're cutting into the wood at one point, even though there's a big movement going on either side of it. And focusing on the breath is a bit like that. You pick one point to make it easy. Just focus, put your attention on that one point, and then you're aware that the breath is going in, passing that one point, and the breath is going out, passing that one point. And if your attention strays during the meditation, your aim is to bring it back to the one point. But you also need, as well as mindfulness directed to knowing that one point and knowing the sensation of the breath at that one point, you need clear comprehension. Because you need to know, is the breath going in? Is it finished? The in-breath, is it finished? And you need to know the breath is going out. Is it finished? You keep attention at the one point, but you also understand the breath is currently going in or going out. And the more you do it, the more subtle your awareness becomes. You're aware of the quality of your breathing, how fast or slow it is, how coarse or refined it is. You'll find as you keep paying attention to this one point, the breathing becomes, perhaps it slows down a little and becomes more subtle, more refined. The sensation of the breath becomes more refined. And that can bring a problem because as the breath becomes more subtle, maybe you don't even notice it. The movement becomes very refined, very subtle. The sensation becomes subtle. So sometimes the movement is becoming almost imperceptible, even though you're still paying attention. And you have to be very careful not to become distracted, because there's very little to hold your attention. In the beginning, sometimes people breathe a little bit more coarsely than normal. They deliberately speed up or intensify their breathing to help them pay attention to it. But that's difficult to sustain for a long period, but in the beginning it may help. They breathe quite coarsely and fast. But as your attention span improves, your ability to pay attention improves, naturally the breath becomes more subtle, more calm. So then you have this challenge of staying with the breath at that one point when there's almost nothing to be aware of. And it may even get to the point where you can't detect the in or the out breath anymore. Your mind is just cool, calm, collected. All your mental energy is gathered together in that one spot. Maybe that very cool, calm feeling is what you take up then as your object of meditation or the focus of your concentration. can no longer detect an in and out movement of the breath, but you're still aware of that one point. Now the very cool energy of the mind and the breath together at that one point becomes prominent. It's that coolness and the unification of the mind in one place. It's what you're taking as your object. And also at that point, sometimes the mind becomes very bright, radiant, luminous. So we call it luminous awareness or radiant awareness, where your attention is turned inwards, your eyes are closed. So in terms of your eyes are cast downwards, looking downwards maybe at the tip of your nose. But not straining, not painful, not straining, but just turned downwards. You're not paying attention to your ears or sounds anymore. You're ignoring them. You're learning to ignore sensations, other sensations around your body. So, pain in your legs or whatever, itches, different sensations, you're learning to ignore them and just stay with the cool, calm feeling that's arisen at that one point where you've been following the breath, focusing on the breath. And the mind is bright because it's turned inwards. It can even be like a switch that's being turned on in a dark room. You may be sitting in a dark room, but the mind seems very bright and radiant. But all of these things that you notice, the brightness of the mind, the coolness of the mind, the unification of the mind, and there may be lightness of body and mind. Just notice them, different experiences that are coming up. Just notice them, you don't have to think about them. I'm giving you a running commentary as we're meditating, but normally your mind can just go quiet. Whatever thoughts arise, you let them go. And you just notice or observe how the body and the mind is in this present moment. So you're giving yourself permission to let go of everything else. Thoughts about the past, the future, sounds, sensations, you can let it all go. And just with this inner knowing, inner awareness, centered around this one point that you've picked to observe the in and out breath. And maybe now the breath has disappeared or it's changed to just an awareness of this cool energy, maybe light, brightness as well. If you stick with that, the mind becomes very stable. We say unwavering, undistracted, because you're not concerned with other things or thinking about other things. Your mind is just settled, one-pointed on its object, or knowing itself really. The mind is just knowing and seeing itself. Then all the other things you normally identify with, you put aside. So the sense of being a person, young, old, male, female, healthy, not healthy, good, bad, everything you may normally think about and identify with, you can set it all aside. And there's just this calm awareness of the mind itself. Sometimes they say the natural mind. The mind that's not proliferating, it's not manufacturing or creating any particular mood. Set aside all the worries, the fears, the anxieties, all the desires, wanting things. Even set aside sleepiness, which is another obstacle, because when the mind becomes calm, we often fall asleep. Your aim is to stay awake, not fall asleep. Just stay with this inner awareness for a little bit longer. I'll stop talking and stay with it until you hear the bell.